The air hung heavy and humid on June 19, 1944, as Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi disembarked his transport aircraft onto the ash-covered runway of Chidori Airfield, Iwo Jima. At 52 years old, this seasoned officer carried a mandate personally endorsed by Prime Minister Hideki Tojo: defend this 8-square-mile volcanic outpost to the bitter end. As Kuribayashi surveyed the desolate landscape, dominated by the brooding presence of Mount Suribachi to the south and blanketed in black sand, he grasped the profound implications of his posting. His wife, Yoshi, would later recount his grim premonition upon receiving the orders, a chilling declaration that even his ashes were unlikely to return from Iwo Jima. This isolated speck of land, roughly 750 miles south of Tokyo, occupied a pivotal strategic position between the freshly seized American bases in the Mariana Islands and the Japanese home islands. Its 3 airfields offer Japanese fighter planes a crucial capability: the ability to intercept American B-29 Superfortress bombers on their destructive missions north to Japan cities. Should Iwo Jima fall into American hands, this vital early warning system would vanish. The Americans would then gain critical emergency landing strips for damaged bombers and establish forward bases for P-51 Mustang fighters, allowing them to escort bombing raids all the way to Tokyo. Yet, what neither Kuribayashi nor the approximately 21,000 soldiers who would eventually form the island's garrison comprehended was that they were on the cusp of engaging in what would become the United States Marine Corps' most brutal and consequential conflict in its entire history. This was to be a 36-day ordeal, a testament to both the futility of Japan's defensive doctrine and the unparalleled bravery of men condemned to die for an already lost cause. The command of Iwo Jima represented both a supreme honor and an undeniable death sentence. On June 8, 1944, Kuribayashi had been granted the rare distinction of a private audience with Emperor Hirohito, just before his departure. However, historians such as Kumiko Kakahashi have proposed that Kuribayashi may have been intentionally chosen for what the military high command knew would be a suicidal mission. The general had garnered powerful adversaries within the ultranationalist factions that dictated Japanese military policy. As deputy military attaché to the United States from 1928 to 1930, Kuribayashi had traveled extensively across America, pursued studies at Harvard University, and directly observed the immense American industrial capacity. He had confided in his wife, writing, "The United States is the last country in the world Japan should fight. Their industrial potential is vast and astonishing, and their people are energetic and adaptable." Such pragmatic views, in an era when Japanese military doctrine prioritized spiritual strength over material resources, had branded Kuribayashi as a defeatist in the eyes of hardline officers. Despite his profound reservations about Japan's war, Kuribayashi approached his assignment with characteristic professionalism and innovative thinking. He commenced his inspection of Iwo Jima's defenses and immediately recognized the inherent flaws in traditional Japanese defensive doctrine. The garrison, adhering to standard protocols, had been meticulously digging beach trenches. The prevailing wisdom dictated, defend at the water's edge, contest every landing, die gloriously on the beaches. Kuribayashi promptly ordered a halt to this work. He had meticulously studied American amphibious assaults on Tarawa, where Japanese beach defenses had been utterly annihilated by naval gunfire before a single Marine even touched shore. He had analyzed the catastrophe at Saipan, where pointless Banzai Charges had squandered thousands of Japanese lives without significantly impeding American victory. Iwo Jima would be different. Kuribayashi resolved to implement a revolutionary strategy, defense in depth, predicated on fortified positions buried deep underground, designed to withstand the most intense bombardments and inflict maximum casualties over an extended period. Rather than challenging the landings directly on the beaches, Kuribayashi planned to permit the Americans to come ashore, draw them inland, and then decimate them from concealed positions impervious to naval and aerial attacks. He directed his engineers to commence construction of an intricate subterranean fortress system, exploiting the island's natural caves and volcanic rock formations. A staggering 25% of the entire garrison was assigned to excavation work, a colossal allocation of manpower that immediately drew criticism from subordinate officers who believed men should be engaged in combat training rather than digging tunnels. According to his former chief of staff, the general frequently underscored, America's productive powers are beyond our imagination. Japan has initiated a war with a formidable adversary, and we must prepare ourselves accordingly. The engineering marvel that unfolded over the subsequent months represented one of the most sophisticated defensive fortification undertakings of the Pacific War. Mining engineers were dispatched from Japan to meticulously design the underground network, crafting blueprints for tunnels at various depths to ensure adequate ventilation and minimize the impact of explosions near entrances. By February 1945, Japanese engineers had excavated approximately 18 kilometers of tunnel connecting defensive positions across the entire island. Soldiers assigned to tunnel duty toiled in temperatures ranging from 30 to 50 degrees Celsius, as the volcanic rock radiated intense heat, transforming the underground passages into suffocating ovens. Men regularly succumbed to heat exhaustion. Fresh water remained critically scarce, with supplies limited to what could be brought by submarine or surface vessels running the gauntlet of American submarines. The northern slope of Mount Suribachi alone housed several thousand yards of tunnels. The main command bunker, situated in the northern highlands near the village of Kita, lay 20 meters underground and comprised multiple chambers linked by 150 meters of passageways, where Kuribayashi established his war room. The garrison defending Iwo Jima represented a cross-section of Japan's military at this late stage of the war. The core fighting force consisted of the 109th Division, approximately 13,000 army personnel organized into two independent mixed brigades. The 2nd Independent Mixed Brigade, under Major General Kota Osuga, numbered approximately 5,000 men, while the 145th Infantry Regiment, commanded by Colonel Masuo Ikeda, contributed 2,700 soldiers. Naval forces totaled approximately 7,500 men from the 27th Air Flotilla under Rear Admiral Toshinosuke Kamaru. Unlike veteran formations that had seen action in China or earlier Pacific campaigns, many defenders were recent conscripts with minimal training. Some were middle-aged reservists called up as Japan scraped the bottom of its manpower reserves. Others were support troops and administrative personnel pressed into combat roles as the Empire's strategic situation continued to deteriorate. A notable officer was Colonel Baron Takichi Nishi, commander of the 26th Tank Regiment. Born into nobility on July 12, 1902, Nishi had achieved international fame by winning a gold medal in show jumping at the 1932 Los Angeles Olympics, becoming a celebrity in Hollywood circles and forging friendships with stars like Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, and Mary Pickford. His widow later recalled his despondency after Pearl Harbor, knowing that war with America was strategic madness but feeling bound by duty. On July 18, 1944, while sailing from Busan, Korea, to Iwo Jima, the transport ship carrying Nishi's regiment was torpedoed by the American submarine USS Cobia. All 28 of the regiment's tanks sank to the bottom of the Pacific. Nishi returned to Tokyo to requisition replacements, managing to secure 22 tanks. During this brief visit home, he made a final trip to visit his beloved horse, Uranus, who had carried him to Olympic glory. Throughout late 1944, defensive preparations intensified despite constant harassment from American aircraft and submarines. The defenders made a crucial discovery: Iwo Jima's black volcanic ash, when combined with cement, created superior concrete. Pillboxes were constructed with reinforced concrete walls 4 feet thick, capable of withstanding direct hits from naval shells. The Japanese installed approximately 300 anti-aircraft guns, 33 naval guns ranging from 4.7 to 6 inches, 438 artillery pieces, 69 anti-tank guns, and Nishi's 22 tanks, which were dug into fixed positions and buried up to their turrets to serve as fortified artillery emplacements. Gasoline-powered generators allowed radios and lighting to operate underground. Hundreds of hidden artillery and mortar positions were strategically placed across the island. The Japanese defensive preparations transformed every part of Iwo Jima into a potential killing zone, subject to defensive fire from multiple concealed positions. Kuribayashi, defying deeply ingrained Japanese military tradition, explicitly forbade Banzai Charges. Such mass frontal assaults had characterized Japanese defensive tactics throughout the Pacific War, with soldiers launching suicidal attacks that fulfilled cultural expectations of honorable death but accomplished nothing militarily. Kuribayashi argued that charging into American guns was suicide without purpose. Instead, every Japanese soldier on Iwo Jima received orders to kill at least 10 Americans before dying. The objective was not victory, which was impossible, but maximum attrition. This strategy created deep divisions within the officer corps. Vice Admiral Sadaichi Matsunaga openly clashed with Kuribayashi over defensive plans, advocating for strong positions along the beaches to directly contest the American landing. Kuribayashi relieved Matsunaga of command, replacing him with Rear Admiral Ikamaru, who proved more willing to coordinate with Army defensive plans. By December 1944, Kuribayashi established February 11, 1945, as the target date for the completion of defensive preparations. Despite harassment from American submarines and aircraft, additional personnel continued arriving through January. The final garrison totaled between 21,000 and 23,000 men. However, supply levels remained woefully inadequate. The defenders had ammunition for only 60% of what military doctrine considered necessary for a single division-level engagement. Food supplies were calculated to last 4 months at most. Fresh water remained critically scarce. Approximately 1,500 Japanese troops had been lost when their transport ships were sunk by American submarines en route to the island. Life on Iwo Jima before the invasion was characterized by constant labor, insufficient supplies, and growing tension. Soldiers lived in caves and tunnels, sleeping on volcanic rock, breathing sulfur-tainted air. The island earned its name from the volcanic gases that permeated everything. There were no trees, no vegetation beyond scrub grass. The heat was relentless. Men developed heat rash, dysentery, and various tropical diseases. Medical supplies were limited. Poor nutrition and unsanitary conditions took a terrible toll, with many soldiers dying of disease before American forces arrived. Yet, Kuribayashi insisted on sharing the hardships of his men, refusing special privileges. According to former subordinates, General Kuribayashi regularly visited wounded enlisted men in the hospital, behavior virtually unheard of for an officer of the general staff. When water rations were reduced, Kuribayashi accepted the same limited allocation as the lowest-ranking private. Kuribayashi's letters home during this period revealed a thoughtful man who loved his family, worried about their future, and accepted his own death as a necessary sacrifice. To his wife, Yoshi, he wrote in November 1944, "You must not expect my survival. The enemy may land on this island soon. Once they do, we must follow the fate of those on Attu and Saipan. Our only hope is to find the enemy. Officers and men know about death very well. I am sorry to end my life here, fighting the United States of America, but I want to defend this island as long as possible and to delay the enemy air raids on Tokyo. Watch out for your health and live long. The future of our children will not be easy either. Please take care of them after my death." These words demonstrated that Kuribayashi harbored no illusions about his fate or the battle's outcome. Beginning June 15, 1944, American B-24 and B-25 bombers relentlessly raided the island for 74 consecutive days, marking the longest pre-invasion bombardment of the Pacific War. These attacks cratered airfields and destroyed surface structures but had limited effectiveness against the underground fortifications. American intelligence assessments severely underestimated both defensive preparations and garrison strength. Reconnaissance photographs showed cratered airfields and destroyed buildings, leading planners to conclude that months of bombing had significantly degraded Japanese capabilities. Intelligence estimates suggested the garrison numbered perhaps 13,000 to 15,000 troops, well below actual strength. More critically, aerial photographs could not penetrate underground to reveal the extensive tunnel network. February 16, 1945, marked the beginning of the final assault phase. The pre-invasion naval bombardment commenced with battleships, cruisers, and destroyers unleashing devastating firepower. Major General Harry Schmidt of the Marine Corps had requested 10 days of heavy bombardment but received only 3 days, further hampered by adverse weather conditions. The Japanese defenders sought refuge in their tunnels, patiently weathering the storm of steel. On February 17, 12 LCI gunboats moved perilously close to shore to support underwater demolition teams. The Japanese emerged from their positions and opened fire with everything available. The gunboats were devastated, with LCI 449 sunk and several others severely damaged, suffering 170 casualties in total. But the sacrifice revealed many hidden Japanese positions, allowing battleships Tennessee and Idaho to move within 2,500 yards of shore on February 18 to pulverize specific targets with devastating accuracy. Inside the tunnels, the experience of bombardment tested the defenders' endurance and sanity. The mountain itself seemed to shake with each impact. Dust and debris constantly fell from tunnel ceilings. Men prayed, sat in silence, or penned final letters to families they knew they would never see again. The Americans fired approximately 22,000 shells at Iwo Jima during the pre-invasion bombardment, each one a stark reminder of the industrial might arrayed against them. Yet, Kuribayashi's defensive strategy proved sound. Underground positions survived largely intact. At 8:59 on February 19, 1945, the first wave of Marines from the 4th and 5th Marine Divisions hit the beaches. The amphibious tractors seemed endless, wave after wave approaching shore. Offshore, the support fleet stretched to the horizon, hundreds of ships representing an assembly of naval power beyond anything the defenders had ever witnessed. Landing craft struggled through heavy surf and steep beaches. Marines jumped from tractors and immediately sank ankle-deep into loose volcanic sand, struggling to move inland. The volcanic ash was soft and loose, causing vehicles to flounder, unable to gain traction. Kuribayashi's orders were explicit: let them land, let them pack the beaches, then open fire with everything. For nearly 30 minutes, Marines advanced with surprisingly light resistance. Then Kuribayashi gave the order. Every artillery piece, every mortar, every machine gun position opened fire simultaneously. The beaches became a killing zone. Marines dove for cover that did not exist. Japanese artillery, pre-registered on every sector of the beach, fired with devastating accuracy. Machine gun fire swept the approaches to the terrace marking the edge of the beach. By day's end, approximately 30,000 Marines had landed, establishing a beachhead that stretched the width of the southern end of the island. They had cut Mount Suribachi off from the rest of the island's defenses. But the cost had been tremendous. Over 500 Marines were killed and more than 1,800 wounded on the first day alone. That first night, Marines prepared for the massive Banzai charges that had characterized previous Pacific battles. But Kuribayashi's orders forbade such attacks. The night passed with only minor probing attacks, leaving Marines confused but grateful. The battle for Mount Suribachi began in earnest on February 20th. The 28th Marine Regiment started the slow, brutal process of reducing the Japanese defenses. Marines advanced yard by yard, using flamethrowers to clear bunkers, explosives to collapse tunnel entrances, and grenades to kill defenders in pillboxes. The Japanese fought tenaciously from prepared positions, falling back through connecting tunnels when positions became untenable, only to re-emerge to fight again from new angles. Colonel Kanehiko Atsuchi, commanding the Mount Suribachi garrison of approximately 1,800 men, conducted the defense with skill and determination. By February 23, after 3 days of continuous fighting, a Marine patrol reached Suribachi's summit. They raised a small American flag at 10:20 hours, triggering cheers from Marines across the beachhead. Later that day, a second patrol brought a larger flag to replace the first. Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal captured this second flag raising in what would become one of the most iconic images of World War II. But for Japanese defenders remaining in tunnels beneath the mountain, the flag meant the battle would continue underground. Isolated groups of soldiers would continue fighting in the Suribachi tunnel complex for weeks after the mountain's surface had been declared secured. The main Japanese defensive positions lay in the northern part of the island, where Kuribayashi had concentrated his strength in terrain favoring the defender. The northern highlands consisted of broken ground, ravines, rocky ridges, and countless caves transformed into an engineered killing zone, with mutually supportive defensive positions. The Marines gave the northern strongpoints names reflecting the horror of fighting there: the Meat Grinder, Turkey Knob, Hill 382, Amphitheater, Bloody Gorge. Each represented a complex of fortified positions that had to be reduced through direct assault. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions attacked these positions simultaneously, advancing slowly against fanatical resistance. The fighting in northern Iwo Jima introduced American forces to the full horror of Kuribayashi's defensive system. Japanese positions that appeared destroyed would come alive with renewed fire hours later, as defenders emerged from tunnels to reoccupy bunkers. Marines developed specialized tactics for tunnel warfare, using flamethrowers to clear connected chambers and explosives to collapse tunnel sections. Flamethrower teams became essential despite suffering casualty rates approaching 92%. Marine tank battalions found their M4A3 R3 flame tanks in constant demand. The 5th Marine Division's flame tanks were expending between 5,000 and 10,000 gallons of napalm daily. As February turned to March, the Japanese defensive position became increasingly desperate. Casualties mounted daily. Food supplies dwindled to starvation rations. Water became so scarce that men suffered from severe dehydration even while fighting. Medical supplies ran out entirely, leaving the wounded to suffer without even a drop of water and basic pain relief. Ammunition stocks approached exhaustion for some calibers, yet the defense continued. Kuribayashi's strategy of maximum attrition was working. American casualties had already exceeded all pre-invasion estimates. The projected 5-day battle had stretched into its 3rd week with no end in sight. Baron Nishi's tank regiment, with tanks destroyed or immobilized, fought as infantry from prepared positions in the northern highlands. American forces knew Nishi was on the island. Intelligence officers broadcast appeals for him to surrender, pointing out that the world would regret losing such a celebrated figure. Nishi never responded. He remained with his men, sharing their hardships, maintaining discipline and morale even as the situation became hopeless. On approximately March 22, 1945, Nishi was killed in action. The exact circumstances remain unknown. His body was never identified among the thousands of Japanese dead in the northern highlands. Some accounts suggest he committed ritual suicide. Others indicate he died leading troops in combat. Nishi was posthumously promoted to colonel and awarded the Order of the Rising Sun, 3rd class, gold rays with neck ribbon. By mid-March, American advances had compressed the remaining Japanese forces into an area of less than 1 square mile in the northern tip of the island. Kuribayashi's command structure remained intact, communication lines still functioning through the tunnel network. On March 17, the general sent his final message to Imperial headquarters in Tokyo: "The battle is approaching its end. Our men are now about 400. Tanks have invaded our last defense line at various sectors. They are now attacking our last stronghold. We continue to fight. I am sorry indeed we could not have defended the island successfully. We are still fighting." His earlier message on March 16 had been even more poignant: "I am very sorry because I can imagine the scenes of disaster in our empire. However, I comfort myself a little, seeing my officers and men die without regret after struggling in this inch-by-inch battle against an overwhelming enemy with many tanks and being exposed to indescribable bombardments." The Americans declared Iwo Jima secured on March 26, 1945, exactly 36 days after the invasion began. Fighting continued for weeks afterward. Japanese soldiers in sealed cave systems continued resisting, emerging at night to scavenge for food and water. Americans systematically sealed tunnel entrances with explosives, pumped seawater into cave systems, and used grenades and flamethrowers to clear underground positions. The last organized resistance ended with Kuribayashi's death, believed to have occurred on March 26 when he led a final attack against American positions. On March 25, 1945, 300 of Kuribayashi's men mounted a final Banzai attack, defying the order that had defined the general's entire defensive strategy. Kuribayashi's body was never found or identified. Rear Admiral Ikamaru also died during this final period. The casualty figures shocked both nations. American forces suffered 26,038 total casualties, including approximately 6,821 deaths. Marine casualties totaled 5,931 killed in action, died of wounds, or missing in action and presumed dead, more than twice as many Marines as had been killed in all of World War I. An additional 209 deaths occurred among Navy corpsmen and surgeons assigned to the Marines. Approximately 19,217 Marines were wounded. This represented the only major Pacific battle where American casualties exceeded Japanese casualties, though Japanese combat deaths were 3 times American deaths. For Japan, the cost was even more catastrophic. Of approximately 21,000 defenders, only 1,083 survived the battle. A mere 216 were captured during actual fighting, with the rest emerging from caves and tunnels in weeks and months afterward. 2 Japanese soldiers remained in hiding until January 6, 1949, nearly 4 years after the battle ended, finally surrendering after years of living in the tunnel system. The strategic value of Iwo Jima justified the terrible cost, though this remained controversial. By war's end, 2,251 B-29 bombers made emergency landings on the island, saving an estimated 24,761 airmen who would otherwise have ditched in the Pacific or crashed attempting to reach the Marianas. The first B-29 to make an emergency landing was Dynamite, which touched down on March 4, 1945, while fighting still raged in the Northern Highlands. P-51 Mustang fighters based on Iwo Jima began escorting bombing raids to Tokyo and other Japanese cities. The island also served as a base for air-sea rescue operations, allowing faster response to downed air crews. The Battle of Iwo Jima produced 27 Medals of Honor, more than any other single battle in Marine Corps history, with 13 awarded posthumously. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz, commenting on the battle, said, "Among the Americans who served on Iwo Island, uncommon valor was a common virtue." The battle demonstrated that Japanese forces could inflict terrible casualties, even when facing overwhelming American superiority. Kuribayashi's tactics showed that determined defenders in prepared positions could extract a horrific price from attackers. Military planners projected that an invasion of the Japanese home islands would produce hundreds of thousands of American casualties if the Japanese employed similar defensive tactics on a larger scale. These projections contributed to the decision to use atomic weapons against Hiroshima and Nagasaki, rather than launch Operation Downfall, the planned invasion of Japan. For Japanese families of men who died on Iwo Jima, the battle's aftermath brought only grief without closure. Most of the dead were never recovered or identified. Families received notification of death in battle, but no bodies were found to bury, no graves to visit. This inability to properly honor the dead carried special significance in Japanese culture, where Buddhist tradition emphasized the importance of proper burial. Even decades after the war, Japanese search teams continued recovering remains from Iwo Jima's caves. The remains of more than 10,000 Japanese soldiers still rest under the island's soil. In the immediate post-war years, the Battle of Iwo Jima remained largely forgotten in Japan. The nation was consumed with rebuilding from total defeat, processing the horror of atomic bombing and firebombing that killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. The strategic bombing campaign had killed approximately 900,000 Japanese civilians. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki killed an estimated 200,000 people. In this context, Iwo Jima was simply one more disaster in a year of unprecedented national catastrophe. Decades later, historians and filmmakers began seriously examining the battle from the defenders' perspective. In 1970, Yoshi Kuribayashi represented Japanese families of war dead at a luncheon in Tokyo with American veterans. In a speech, she thanked them for expressions of friendship and received a standing ovation. She later attended both the 1985 and 1995 reunions of honor hosted on the island. The 1985 reunion of honor brought together former enemies as old men, their wartime hatred mellowed by decades of peace. They walked battlefields together, visiting places where they had tried to kill each other. Japanese veterans showed American Marines the tunnel system they had defended. American veterans explained their tactics for reducing these defenses. The meetings were emotional, marked by tears, embraces, and shared prayers for the dead. Veterans spoke of finding peace through reconciliation. Similar reunions continued at 5-year intervals, building bridges between former enemies. The physical island remains largely unchanged since 1945, preserved in its battle-scarred state. Today it is officially known by its Japanese name, Iwoto. Civilian access is severely restricted, allowed only for memorial services attended by veterans and families of the fallen. The Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force operates a small naval air facility. The United States Navy occasionally uses the airfield for carrier landing practice. But mostly Iwo Jima remains a memorial to the dead, where thousands of Japanese soldiers remain entombed in sealed caves, where American and Japanese monuments stand side by side. Modern historians examining the battle with access to sources from both sides have reached generally consistent conclusions. Tactically, the battle demonstrated the effectiveness of defense in depth when properly implemented. Kuribayashi's strategy inflicted maximum casualties and prolonged the battle far beyond American expectations, transforming what military planners expected to be a 5-day operation into a 36-day ordeal. Strategically, the island's value as an emergency landing field and fighter base justified its capture, though debate continues whether the cost was proportionate to the benefit. The battle showcased American industrial might and logistical capability while demonstrating Japanese tactical skill, engineering prowess, and the determination of defenders fighting from prepared positions. Cultural memory of Iwo Jima differs markedly between the United States and Japan. In America, the battle holds iconic status, exemplified by Rosenthal's photograph and the Marine Corps War Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. Every Marine learns about Iwo Jima during training. In Japan, awareness remained limited until 2006 when Clint Eastwood's film Letters from Iwo Jima brought renewed attention to the defenders' perspective. The film, shot in Japanese with Japanese actors, attempted to present the battle through Japanese eyes. The film was based on General Kuribayashi's letters and the book So Sad to Fall in Battle, by Kumiko Kakahashi. Tactical innovations developed during the Battle of Iwo Jima influenced military doctrine for decades. Combined arms tactics became standard practice. The importance of specialized weapons for reducing fortifications was recognized. Tunnel warfare techniques would be employed in later conflicts, particularly in Vietnam, where the Viet Cong employed similar underground defense systems. The battle demonstrated that even overwhelming firepower and numerical superiority could not eliminate the need for infantry to close with and destroy the enemy in fortified positions. General Kuribayashi's letters from Iwo Jima provide unique insight into his state of mind as the American invasion approached. His correspondence with his wife Yoshi and children revealed a man who loved his family deeply, accepted his own death as inevitable, and hoped his sacrifice would protect them. In one letter he expressed the philosophy that sustained him: if our children can live safely for one more day, it would be worth the one more day that we defend this island. This belief sustained Japanese defenders through the hell of battle. Whether the battle truly protected the homeland for any meaningful length of time remains debatable. What cannot be debated is the sincerity of the belief and the determination it produced. The Battle of Iwo Jima stands as one of history's most brutal confrontations, a 36-day struggle where approximately 27,000 men died or were grievously wounded on an 8-square-mile island. It demonstrated the terrible price of war, the courage of individuals caught in circumstances beyond their control, and the possibility of reconciliation even after the most brutal conflicts. Nishi, Rear Admiral Ikamaru, and thousands of Japanese soldiers whose names history never recorded, fought with extraordinary courage for a cause already lost, following orders they could not refuse, dying for a homeland that would ultimately be saved not by their sacrifice but by Japan's unconditional surrender 4 months later. The island itself stands as a monument to all who fought there, its volcanic rock forever associated with one of World War II's bloodiest battles. The tunnels that once sheltered desperate defenders now shelter only memories and the remains of those who never left. The beaches where Marines struggled through volcanic sand are quiet now, disturbed only by occasional veterans or researchers visiting to pay respects. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi died as he had lived, with honor, courage, and unwavering commitment to duty. His body was never found, but his legacy endures in the letters he wrote to his family, in the respect accorded him by American Marines who fought against his defensive genius, and in the example he set of a commander who shared every hardship with his men. Baron Takeshi Nishi, the Olympic champion once celebrated in Hollywood, died fighting Americans he had once called friends, demonstrating the tragedy of war that transforms friends into enemies. The 21,000 Japanese soldiers who defended Iwo Jima, most of whom died in the island's volcanic tunnels and caves, fought with extraordinary courage for a homeland they would never see again.